Most men spend their entire lives trying to understand women, never realizing they're asking the wrong question. The question isn't how to understand her. The question is how to make her unable to understand herself when she's around you. Niccolo Machiavelli, the master of power dynamics, saw something 5 centuries ago that modern men still miss. Women don't fall for what you give them. They fall for what you take away. In this video, you're going to discover the 7 emotional gaps that exist in every woman's psychology. These aren't weaknesses to exploit cruelly. These are doorways to influence that most men never even notice. We're not here to learn pickup lines or relationship advice. We're here to study the invisible architecture of female psychology and how a man who understands it can create attraction that feels effortless, natural, and completely unstoppable. If you're ready to stop playing by everyone else's rules and start operating from a position of quiet power, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to learn will change how you see every interaction with women for the rest of your life. The first gap is the validation void. Every woman, no matter how confident she appears, carries an invisible hunger for validation. But here's where most men get it completely wrong. They try to fill that void directly with compliments, attention, and approval. That's exactly what she expects. That's what every other man does, and that's why it has zero power. The Machiavelli approach is different. You acknowledge the void exists, then you control the flow. You don't shower her with praise. You give her tiny drops of genuine recognition, but only when she's earned it. And here's the key. You make her feel like she almost had your full approval, but not quite. You say something like "you're smarter than I expected" with a slight smile, then you change the subject. That phrase does something devastating to her mind. It gives her validation, but it also suggests she had to prove something to you. It implies you had lower expectations that she exceeded. And most importantly, it leaves her wondering what else she needs to do to fully impress you. This creates what I call validation tension. She's gotten a taste, but she wants the full meal. And now she's thinking about you differently. Not as another man trying to win her over, but as a judge she needs to perform for. That shift in dynamic is everything. The second gap is the mystery addiction. Women are hardwired to solve puzzles, especially when it comes to men. But most men hand over their entire life story in the first conversation. They explain their feelings, their past, their intentions, their fears. They think transparency builds trust. It doesn't. It builds boredom. Machiavelli understood that power comes from what people don't know about you, not what they do. So you become selectively mysterious. Not distant, not cold, but strategically incomplete. When she asks about your past relationships, you don't lie, but you don't elaborate either. You say, "I learned what I needed to learn," and then you asked her something about herself. When she wants to know what you're thinking, you pause, smile slightly, and say you're not ready for that conversation yet. This creates cognitive tension in her mind. She knows there are layers to you she hasn't accessed. She knows you're choosing what to reveal and when. And that choice makes you infinitely more interesting than the man who spills everything hoping she'll like him more. Mystery isn't about being secretive. It's about being selective. And when a woman feels like she only knows 70% of who you are, she becomes obsessed with discovering the remaining 30%. The third gap is the security paradox. Here's something most men never realize. Women crave security, but they're also drawn to slight unpredictability. They want to feel safe with you, but they also want to feel a little off balance. Most men pick one or the other. They either become completely predictable and boring, or they become chaotic and unreliable. Neither works. The Machiavellian man creates controlled unpredictability. He's consistent in his character but surprising in his actions. He might show up with flowers on a random Tuesday, not because it's expected, but because he felt like it. He might disappear for a weekend without explanation, not to punish her, but because he has his own life and priorities. He creates what I call safe danger. She feels secure in his strength and reliability, but she never quite knows what he's going to do next, and that combination is intoxicating. She can't get comfortable enough to take you for granted, but she can't get scared enough to run away either. You become her favorite uncertainty, the man she can count on to be unpredictable, in the most attractive way possible. The fourth gap is the competition trigger. Women are competitive creatures, but they rarely admit it directly. They compete for attention, for status, for the best men, but they do it subtly, quietly, strategically. Most men are completely blind to this competition, which means they can't use it. But when you understand it, you have access to one of the most powerful psychological levers that exist. You don't create competition by flirting with other women in front of her. That's crude and obvious. You create competition by being a man that other women naturally notice. You improve yourself not for her, but for your own standards. You develop skills, knowledge, presence. You become genuinely more interesting, more capable, more magnetic. And when other women start paying attention to you, you don't flaunt it, but you don't hide it either. You let her see that you're a man with options, not through words, but through reality. This triggers something primal in her psychology. She realizes she's not just choosing whether she wants you, she's competing for whether you choose her. And that shift from "does he like me" to "how do I make sure he picks me" changes everything about how she sees you and how she behaves around you. The fifth gap is the emotional leadership vacuum. Most men today have been trained to defer to women emotionally, to ask how she's feeling, to manage her moods, to walk on eggshells around her emotions. This creates a leadership vacuum that she doesn't want to fill, but ends up filling by default. And when a woman has to lead emotionally, she loses respect for the man who won't. The Machiavellian man fills this vacuum differently. He doesn't manage her emotions, he doesn't try to fix her feelings, but he also doesn't get swept away by them. When she's emotional, he remains grounded. When she's chaotic, he stays calm. When she's testing him with drama or mood swings, he doesn't react with matching energy. He responds with steady, unshakable presence. This does something powerful to her nervous system. She feels like she can be fully herself around you without destabilizing you. She can express her emotions without having to manage yours too, and that kind of emotional leadership is rare. Most men either become emotional themselves or try to shut down her emotions. You do neither. You become the rock against which her emotional waves can crash without moving you. And that strength becomes deeply attractive to her, on a level she might not even understand consciously. The sixth gap is the purpose hierarchy. Women are attracted to men with mission, with direction, with something bigger than just relationships driving them. But most men make the relationship their primary focus. They organize their lives around her schedule, her needs, her wants. They think this shows love and commitment. It actually shows a lack of personal direction. The Machiavellian man has what I call hierarchical clarity. His purpose comes first. His mission, his growth, his values, his goals. She's important, but she's not everything. And this isn't coldness. This is attractive priority management. When she sees that you have something driving you that's bigger than your desire for her, she doesn't feel less valued. She feels more intrigued. She sees a man who can't be derailed by love, who can't be controlled by affection, who won't lose himself in a relationship, and that independence becomes magnetic. She wants to be part of your world, not the center of it. Because a man with real purpose always has options, always has direction, and always has the strength to walk away if necessary. And that possibility, that subtle threat of loss, keeps the dynamic alive and electric. The seventh gap is the respect test cycle. Every woman tests the men in her life for respect, not consciously, not maliciously, but instinctively. She needs to know if you'll maintain your boundaries under pressure, if you'll keep your word when it's inconvenient, if you'll stay true to your standards when she's challenging them. Most men fail these tests by either becoming aggressive or becoming submissive. They either fight or fold. Neither response earns respect. The Machiavellian response is different. When she tests your boundaries, you don't argue about them. You enforce them calmly and consistently. When she challenges your decisions, you don't justify them endlessly. You explain once, clearly, then you stop talking. When she tries to change your mind through emotion or manipulation, you don't get angry or defensive. You simply don't move. This consistency under pressure is what builds real respect. She learns that your boundaries aren't suggestions. Your word isn't negotiable. Your standards don't shift based on her mood or tactics. And that reliability, that unshakable consistency, becomes the foundation of genuine attraction. Because, deep down, every woman wants to know she's with a man strong enough to handle her, at her worst, and still not compromise his values. These 7 gaps exist in every woman's psychology, and most men never learn to recognize them, let alone use them strategically. But you're not most men. You understand that attraction isn't about what you give or how hard you try. It's about what you withhold, how you position yourself, and the subtle psychological dynamics you create without her even realizing it. You don't chase attention, you command it. You don't beg for respect. You earn it through consistency. You don't try to be everything to her. You become the one thing she can't figure out or forget. This isn't manipulation, this is mastery. The mastery of understanding human psychology and using that understanding to create the kind of attraction that doesn't fade with time, but actually grows stronger. Because you're not playing the game everyone else is playing. You're playing a deeper game, a more sophisticated game. A game where the man who understands the rules always has the advantage. So if something shifted in your perspective today, if you felt a recognition of truths you've sensed but never had words for, comment the word power below. That tells me you're ready to see the game beneath the game. And if you want to master every aspect of psychological influence and attraction, subscribe now, because what's coming next will show you how to become completely unforgettable to any woman you choose, not through what you do, but through who you become.